Elena Carter had been in some awkward diplomatic meetings before, like the one where a reptilian ambassador mistook her handshake for a mating proposal. But this was next level. She sat in a cold, metallic chair, wrist-bound, facing a group of smug, self-important aliens who clearly thought they had just pulled off the heist of the century. The Galactic Council chamber was an impressive sight, towering, gleaming walls lined with holographic projections of legal doctrines and treaties that, ironically, they were currently violating. The council members, a mix of different alien species, loomed over her on an elevated dais, murmuring to each other in self-satisfaction. "So, let me get this straight," Elena said, her tone as dry as a desert. "You kidnapped me, a human diplomat, off a neutral space station, in direct violation of about 40 intergalactic treaties, because you think I'm, what? A spy? An assassin? A particularly dangerous librarian?" A council member, a bulbous-headed Zonar with far too many eyes, adjusted his ceremonial robes. "We are aware of humanity's deceitful nature. You were caught transmitting secret messages to your homeworld." Elena sighed. "You mean my daily reports? The ones I'm legally required to send as part of my job? Those messages?" The council members exchanged glances. A particularly jittery one, a wiry insectoid creature, clicked its mandibles. "The point remains. You're a liability to galactic stability. And as such, the council has decided to detain you indefinitely." Elena leaned back, suppressing a smirk. "Wow, indefinitely? That's a big word. Do you guys even know what you're doing?" The Zelenar puffed up in offense. "We are the Galactic Council. Our authority is absolute." "Oh, that's adorable," Elena muttered under her breath. The problem with aliens who had never fought humans was that they had no idea what kind of people they were dealing with. Humanity wasn't the biggest, strongest, or most technologically advanced species in the galaxy, but they were, without question, the most unreasonably stubborn. And right now, the Galactic Council had just made a mistake so enormous it would be studied in history classes for centuries. They had taken General Alexander Carter's wife. Elena was tempted to warn them, just for the sheer comedy of seeing their reactions. Something along the lines of, "You do realize my husband is basically the boogeyman with a battle fleet, right?" But no, that would spoil the fun. Instead, she simply smiled. The smile made several council members visibly uncomfortable. "She's not taking this seriously," the insectoid chittered nervously. "She is attempting psychological manipulation," the Zelenar declared. "We must not fall for it." "Oh, trust me," Elena said. "If I was trying to manipulate you, you'd know. Right now, I'm just enjoying the show." With a grand, unnecessary gesture, the council leader pressed a glowing panel on his podium. The walls shimmered, revealing a massive holographic display of her prison cell, a sterile, high-security chamber with energy restraints and automated sentry drones. "You will remain under constant surveillance," the leader announced. "There is no escape." Elena tilted her head. "Neat. What's the Wi-Fi password?" The council members bristled at her lack of concern. The Zelenar slammed a fist against the podium. "Human, you fail to grasp the severity of your situation." "No, I get it," Elena said, her expression suddenly thoughtful. "You think you've made a smart move. You believe that holding me hostage will give you leverage over humanity. That maybe the Terran Coalition will grovel at your feet, beg for my release, offer you concessions." She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "But here's the thing, gentlemen, that's not how this ends." The chamber fell silent. Elena sat back and stretched, as if getting comfortable for the show about to unfold. "Right now, my husband is getting the news. He's probably standing in a command center somewhere, looking at a screen, his expression all cold and unreadable. His officers are shifting uncomfortably, waiting for orders because they know what's coming next." She tilted her head, as if considering. "I'd give it, maybe 48 hours before you start seeing the first warships in your system." The council members shifted in their seats. "Preposterous," one scoffed. "Humanity would not dare." "Oh, see, that's your second mistake," Elena interrupted cheerfully. Your first mistake was taking me in the first place. But your second? That's assuming my husband is going to bother with diplomacy. There was an awkward pause. The insectoid clicked nervously. Surely, humanity would not risk. No, 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 you don't get it, Elena said, laughing softly. You've already lost. Right now, while we're having this little chat, there's a fleet mobilizing. Right now, people far more terrifying than me are making plans. And the thing is, my husband, he's not coming here to negotiate. Another silence. Then, the Zelenar laughed, a harsh, nasal sound. You think we fear your husband? We are the Galactic Council. We have the largest fleets, the most advanced technology. One man cannot stand against us. Elena smiled again, this time with something dangerous in her eyes. See, that's the third mistake you've made, she said softly. You assume my husband is just one man. For the first time since the meeting began, a sliver of doubt flickered across the council members' faces. Elena stood up as much as her restraints allowed, her voice calm and measured. So, here's what's going to happen. You're going to sit there feeling very smug and self-important while you congratulate yourselves on this strategic victory. Meanwhile, humanity is preparing to teach you a very important lesson about actions and consequences. She sat back down, crossing one leg over the other. Now, if you'll excuse me, she said, stifling a yawn. I'd like to get some rest before the fireworks start. The council leader hesitated, then snarled, Take her to her cell. Two guards moved forward, but Elena barely paid them any attention. She was too busy imagining the absolute panic that was about to erupt when the first human warships dropped out of hyperspace. And oh, was it going to be glorious? The command center of the TSS Retribution was silent. Not the kind of silence that came with peace, but the kind that arrived when everyone in the room collectively realized that someone, some absolute idiot, had just made the worst mistake of their existence. General Alexander Carter stood at the center of it all, staring at the massive holo display showing the intercepted transmission from the Galactic Council. The grainy footage of his wife, Elena Carter, sitting bound in a chair, looking entirely too amused for someone who had just been taken hostage, looped for the third time. No one dared to speak. Admiral Vasquez, an experienced officer who had seen Carter wipe entire fleets off star maps, finally cleared her throat. Sir, standard protocol suggests. Standard protocol? Carter's voice was deceptively soft, like the sound of a knife being unsheathed. Tell me, Admiral, does standard protocol account for the Galactic Council stealing my wife? Vasquez hesitated. No, sir. Thought so. Carter's gaze remained locked on the screen. He studied Elena's expression, relaxed, confident, the barest hint of a smirk. She knew he was coming. That was the thing about his wife. She wasn't worried. But the Galactic Council should be. He exhaled slowly, then turned to his officers. Status report. Commander Reynolds, his chief strategist, swallowed before answering. The fleet is on standby. We have 2 dreadnoughts, 15 battleships, 32 cruisers, and a carrier strike group ready to move. Just say the word, sir. Carter's fingers curled slightly at his sides. That fleet? That was a negotiation fleet. It was meant to intimidate, to apply pressure. It was not a fleet meant to do what he was about to do. Double it, he ordered. The room went still. Even Vasquez hesitated. Sir, you heard me. Carter's voice was ice. Double it, and alert the Black Vengeance Armada to prepare for deployment. Someone audibly choked. The Black Vengeance Armada was not a negotiation fleet. It was the kind of fleet you deployed when you wanted someone's species to be a cautionary tale in history books. Reynolds carefully picked his words. Sir, deploying that level of force would send a strong message. Carter finally turned to face them, his sharp green eyes unreadable. A message. He took a step forward, his voice quiet but carrying the weight of absolute certainty. Let me be very clear. I am not sending a message. I am sending a warning. Silence. And then, because the universe had an impeccable sense of timing, the transmission from the Galactic Council updated. The new message was short, simple, the kind of arrogance that could only come from people who didn't yet understand the rules of the game they were playing. General Carter, Any attempt to interfere with our jurisdiction will be considered an act of war. Choose wisely. Reynolds exhaled. Well, that's unfortunate. Carter's expression didn't change. He tapped a button on his wrist console, and the holodisplay zoomed in on the Galactic Council's primary security station, where Elena was being held. The structure was formidable, with energy shields powerful enough to withstand a fleet assault. It would be a nightmare to infiltrate. For anyone else, Carter cracked his knuckles, then turned back to his officers. Move the fleet. We leave in 6 hours. Vasquez frowned. Sir, if I may, wouldn't it be wiser to demand her release first? Send an ultimatum? Carter considered that for exactly 1 second. No. A beat. No. No. He turned back to the holodisplay, watching the tiny image of Elena, her smug expression frozen mid-smirk. I want them to see us coming. I want them to feel the exact moment they realize they made a mistake. He turned back to his officers, voice cold and final. We don't ask for permission. We don't negotiate. We take her back. And that was that. The next 6 hours were a masterclass in military efficiency. Across the TSS Retribution, thousands of crew members moved with ruthless precision. Weapons systems were calibrated. Troop deployments were optimized. Boarding teams were prepped for direct insertion combat. By the time the fleet broke orbit, the message was clear. Someone was about to have a very, very bad day. The journey to the Galactic Council security station took only a few hours. The moment the fleet exited hyperspace, alarms across the Council's territory exploded into chaos. Carter watched from the bridge as the enemy defense grid activated. A network of orbital cannons and automated drones forming an imposing wall of firepower. A lesser commander might have hesitated, might have weighed their options. Carter? He just smiled. Fire, he ordered. The first wave of torpedoes struck the orbital cannons, overloading their shields before they could lock onto targets. At the same time, squadrons of human fighters launched, weaving through enemy formations with surgical precision. On the Council security station, panic was spreading fast. The station commander, a bloated reptilian alien, screeched at his officers. It's impossible. Humans wouldn't dare attack directly. A lieutenant trembled. Sir, we have incoming transmissions. The commander snarled. Put them through. The holodisplay flickered, revealing the one face they had prayed they wouldn't see. General Alexander Carter. His voice was calm, unhurried. Release my wife. The station commander puffed up in false bravado. General Carter, you are in violation of... Carter tilted his head slightly. That's cute. Then, without breaking eye contact, he gestured to the weapons officer. Fire again. The station shook violently as another wave of human torpedoes crashed into its shields. Warning sirens blared, lights flickered, and half the command crew fell over from the impact. The station commander scrambled upright. Wait. Let's talk. Carter's expression was unreadable. You had your chance. Outside, the Black Vengeance Armada fully deployed. The remaining Galactic Council forces realized their mistake a second too late. The human fleet surged forward, unstoppable, a tidal wave of destruction led by a single, unshakable force of nature. A man who just wanted his damn wife back. The Galactic Council had prepared for war before. They had drafted strategies, constructed fleets, and even held pompous ceremonies where bloated admirals gave speeches about the inevitability of their victory. They had never prepared for this. From the moment the Black Vengeance Armada arrived, the battle wasn't so much a fight as it was a clinical dismantling. The Council's defense fleet, a grand assembly of warships meant to project dominance, was currently projecting smoke, debris, and terrified distress signals across the system. On the bridge of the TSS Retribution, General Alexander Carter stood with the stillness of a man who had already decided how this was going to end. Status? He asked. Commander Reynolds barely suppressed a grin. Enemy forces are down 63%. Their shields are collapsing across the station. Their defense grid is fried. He gestured to the chaotic holodisplay, where Council warships were actively trying to flee the system. Most of their remaining fleet has entered full retreat. Carter exhaled through his nose. There was something uniquely satisfying about watching an enemy realize too late that they'd picked a fight with the wrong species. One of the station's officers, a trembling amphibian with far too many eyelids, was currently reevaluating all of his life choices as the command center shook around him. "Sir," he croaked, clutching his console like a life raft. "The humans, they're tearing through our defenses. Shields at 20%. Structural integrity failing. We have to." The station commander, the same puffed-up reptilian who had laughed at the idea of humans posing a real threat just hours ago, was sweating through his uniform. "This is impossible," he hissed. "Humanity doesn't have this kind of firepower." A nearby officer, who had just watched a battleship get split in half like a piece of cheap furniture, turned to him with dead eyes. "Sir, I don't think it matters what we thought they had." The commander licked his lips. "We have to negotiate." A comms officer screeched in terror as a new transmission forced its way onto the main display. The station commander's stomach dropped, because staring back at him in real time was General Alexander Carter, the human warlord, the butcher of Andorra V, the man who had just obliterated 2/3 of his fleet in less time than it took to order lunch. Carter was sitting in his command chair, perfectly still. Behind him, the glow of a fully operational war machine bathed the bridge in cold blue light. "Hello," Carter said evenly. "I believe you have something of mine." The station commander tried to regain control of the situation. "General Carter, this is a Galactic Council facility. If you do not withdraw your forces immediately, we will." Carter sighed and rubbed his temple. "You're still talking." A brief nod to his weapons officer. The next wave of torpedoes crashed into the station's hull, sending fire and wreckage spiraling into space. Entire sectors lost power. Consoles exploded. The screams of panicked officers filled the chamber. The station commander very quickly revised his approach. "Wait," he stammered. "We're prepared to discuss terms." Carter arched an eyebrow. "Terms?" The station commander nodded desperately. Yes, terms. We can return your wife immediately. No harm done. This doesn't have to." Carter's voice dropped to absolute zero. "You put my wife in chains." The station commander's mouth went dry. "You broadcasted it," Carter continued, voice calm but carrying the weight of something vast and terrible. "You let your people laugh. Mock her. You made a spectacle of it." He leaned forward slightly. "And now you want to talk about no harm done?" The station commander had never feared a human before. He did now. Carter let the silence hang between them for 5 agonizing seconds. Then he leaned back, exhaling. "Release her." The order was obeyed so violently fast that Elena Carter was practically ejected from the station. A council shuttle, under heavy escort, raced toward the human fleet, the crew tripping over themselves to ensure her safe return. On board the TSS Retribution, Carter stood at the hangar bay entrance, waiting. When the shuttle doors finally opened, revealing Elena, alive, smirking, and absolutely fine, he exhaled slowly. "Hey, sweetheart," she said, stepping down the ramp. Carter took 2 long strides forward and crushed her in a hug. Elena grinned against his shoulder. "You brought the entire fleet, huh?" "Half." She pulled back, raising an eyebrow. "Half." Carter's expression was unreadable. "Didn't think I needed the other half." Elena snorted. "I love you." Carter's gaze softened. "I know, but there was one last thing left to do." He turned back to his officers. "Open a system-wide broadcast." A flicker, a chime, and then, across the entire Galactic Council network, the humans hijacked the airwaves. Billions of screens, holograms, and comms devices blinked to life, revealing General Alexander Carter standing in the hangar of his warship, his wife at his side. His voice was calm, absolute, unquestionable. "This was your only warning." The broadcast cut. Across the stars, an entire galactic civilization held its breath. Elena Carter had been in some interesting situations before. There was that time she'd survived a crash landing on a jungle planet filled with apex predators, and the time she'd accidentally started a planetary rebellion by insulting a dictator's mustache. And, of course, the time she'd beaten a heavily armed warlord in a drinking contest and stole his fleet out from under him. But being kidnapped by the Galactic Council and watching her husband burn his way across the stars to get her back, this was a new one. She sat comfortably in the shuttle, watching as the Council escorts scrambled to make sure she got back to the humans in one piece. The sheer panic in their movements was almost flattering. They were terrified of what Carter would do if even one hair on her head was out of place. Good. As soon as the shuttle landed in the TSS Retribution's hangar, the doors hissed open, and there he was. Alexander Carter, her husband, her absolute menace of a husband. He was standing at the entrance, arms crossed, that infamous warlord expression on his face. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Elena smirked. "Hey, sweetheart, you made quite the mess." Carter closed the distance in 2 strides and crushed her in a hug. She grinned against his chest. "You know, this is really overkill. I could have broken out myself." Carter pulled back just enough to give her a look. "Elena." "Yes." He tilted his head slightly. "They put you in chains." Elena hesitated. "Well, yes. They broadcasted it." Her smirk wavered. "Okay, that was rude, but—" They laughed. Elena blinked. Carter's voice was quiet but absolute. "I don't let people laugh at you." Oh, damn." She felt a little weak in the knees, actually. But then again, watching her husband unleash a galactic-level war over her was admittedly kind of hot. Carter turned to the officers waiting behind him. "Bring me the council delegates." The demand, was carried out immediately. Within minutes, a group of trembling Galactic Council representatives was standing before them, looking like a bunch of students about to get expelled. Carter's voice was calm. Too calm. "You're going to explain something to me." The lead delegate, a spindly insectoid with nervous mandibles, swallowed hard. "Why, yes, General Carter." Carter took a slow step forward. The insectoid flinched. "You," Carter said evenly, "thought it was a good idea to kidnap my wife." The delegate's mandibles twitched. "It was a miscalculation." Carter nodded. "A miscalculation." He turned slightly, gesturing to the burning wreckage of the Council's defense fleet visible through the hangar bay's energy shields. "You see that?" The delegate made a faint choking sound. Carter nodded again, like a teacher explaining something to an exceptionally dense student. "That's what happens when you miscalculate." One of the delegates, a reptilian with poor impulse control, snarled, "This is madness. No species declares total war over a single person." Carter's expression didn't change. "No weak species does." Silence. And then he smiled. It was the kind of smile that made even the most hardened warlords reevaluate their career choices. "Let me explain something to you," he said, his voice almost gentle. "You laid hands on my wife. You humiliated her. You laughed." The reptilian swallowed. Carter tilted his head slightly. "So I decided to remind the galaxy of something." The delegates didn't breathe. Carter's voice dropped to absolute zero. "No one touches what's mine." The hangar bay was deathly silent. The insectoid delegate tried, desperately, to salvage the situation. "General Carter, I assure you, the Galactic Council." Carter raised a hand. The delegate immediately stopped talking. Carter's green eyes locked onto them, unreadable. "Your council will make a public declaration," he said. "You will announce that humanity is not to be threatened, trifled with, or provoked." He leaned in slightly. "And you'll make it very, very clear that anyone who even thinks about harming my wife again." The delegates collectively held their breath. Carter smiled. "They won't get a war." A pause. "They'll get extinction." The delegates visibly paled. Carter straightened, his tone businesslike. "You have 24 hours to issue the declaration. If I don't see it broadcasted across every sector, I bring the other half of my fleet." The insectoid nodded, so quickly his exoskeleton creaked. "Why, yes, General Carter. Right away." Carter exhaled, satisfied. "Good." He turned back to Elena. "You ready to go home?" She grinned. "Absolutely." As they turned to leave, one of the braver delegates, his voice shaking, dared to ask, "Will humanity seek further retribution for this incident?" Carter glanced back. "Retribution?" His fleet had burned through warships like kindling. Entire armadas had been shattered. And this delegate thought that hadn't been retribution enough? Carter chuckled softly. He wrapped an arm around Elena's waist and guided her toward the exit, calling back over his shoulder. Consider yourselves lucky. And with that, they were gone. The Galactic Council didn't just release their warning. They engraved it into the history books.